Hey guys, hello and welcome everyone. I'm glad that you were able to take some time out to attend this live event today. I would like to welcome all of our new attendees and welcome back our previous listeners as well. It's great to see you again. We have about 3,000 people attending this event from all over the world today, so that is so awesome. Time to grab your lunch, coffee, or popcorn, and let's get this going. First off, a quick introduction about me. My name is Anuj Saigal, and I am the VP of Sales for Strategic Accounts at BayOne Solutions. We're one of the top staffing companies in North America. I've been at BayOne for about 8 years now, working with some of our key customers and helping them scale up their teams. I enjoy playing sports, music festivals, and a big foodie, exploring all kinds of cuisines that I can get my hands on. Today, obviously, a big thank you to BayOne for hosting this special event. Here's a short introduction about BayOne Solutions.
Large companies compete like startups. Across industries, companies are now finding themselves in the tech business. From banking to fintech, retail to e-commerce, and healthcare to health tech. BayOne helps companies with their transformation journey into tech companies. Whether moving forward to the future of work by providing qualified experts on demand, training their legacy workforce on future technologies, or automating their business processes, BayOne is a unique partner for our clients' success. We help client teams scale up quickly through our deep pools of talent. BayOne screens each candidate so you don't have to spend time interviewing the wrong people. Consultants stay longer because of our comprehensive Employee 360 program. And we are committed to improving our clients' diversity of talent. We are metrics-driven, so results are assured. BayOne, the future works here.
Thank you, BayOne, for this awesome platform. Really appreciate it. All right, we are hosting a series of future of work events, as you guys might already know, because the technology landscape is changing fairly quickly, and the job responsibilities in organizations are changing even faster. Today's event is Future of UX Design. I also wanted to give a big shout out to our valuable customers, employees, and consultants that are making a difference, and also a hello to all of our future customers listening in. We've received a ton of feedback and questions on UX design. Keeping that in mind, we want to invite an elite panel to talk about what UX design is, why is it growing, and the evolution of UX design, and how you can get involved with the same and maybe answer some of your questions along the way. So without further delay, let me introduce you to my close friends and the panel for today. Starting with Tony Soni, who is working at 8x8 as a vice president for product and user experience design. She is responsible for leading the strategic vision and user experience for the company's integrated cloud communication, collaboration, and contact center solutions. Previously, Tony successfully built and led the design team at MobileIron. Her passion for building a strong customer experience is based on end user trust and privacy, striving for enhanced efficiency, increased social collaboration, and driving accelerated product management. She is passionate about leadership and has been an active mentor and coach for inspiring and supporting her fellow women in technology and design. Brandon Arnovic is the interim director of user experience at Rodan Fields, the #1 premium skincare company in the United States. He joined Rodan Fields in 2014 as the first on the team, which came with many challenges. Evangelizing the value of good UX and promoting an agile environment became his soapbox. Along the way, he started Mission Minis, a Minis cupcake shop in the Mission District of San Francisco. So if you're around, definitely swing by. He competed on 3 episodes of Cupcake Wars and eventually won first place. So that's so cool. He also received a platinum record in 2011 for music production on the Foster the People debut album Torches, featuring the hit Pumped Up Kicks. Whether it's music, baking, or UX design, he loves to create experiences that bring value and solve problems. Abhijit Thosar is a design leader focused on transforming consumer and enterprise experiences by leveraging the power of design thinking. Over 2 decades, Abhijit has worked across continents and industries to help Fortune 100 brands innovate on product and service experiences, deliver business value, and differentiate in the marketplace. Many of his projects have won industry awards and recognition in global markets for their measurable impact on customer experience and underlying business metrics. Abhijit joined VMware in 2019 as a product design architect, where he works in collaboration with a talented global team of engineers, product managers, and designers to craft end-to-end customer stories cutting across VMware, multi-cloud product portfolio. When not working, you will find Abhijit hiking the trails across the Bay Area, experimenting with food, or riding his motorbike. Joey Vallejo is head of design and user research at MSCI, an independent provider of research-driven insights, tools, and indices for investors. Previously, Joey was at Netgear, Citrix Systems, eBay, SAP Concur, and Visa. He's a firm believer that the overall process, collaboration, and communication are just as important as the end result for crafting usable and quality software experiences for customers. Joey is a San Francisco Bay Area native who now lives in the Central Valley. Family, culture, classic cars, tech, barbecue, and good food play a big role in his life. When he has downtime, you will find Joey in his garage tinkering with his 1954 Mercury Monterey, sketching app ideas, or at the grill whipping up some fantastic meals for friends and family. Joey, hopefully we get some invites too. And finally, as VP UX for RingCentral, Michael Peachy built a global UX team of 100 from the ground up, responsible for their entire suite of products, and among many other things, rebuilt both iOS and Android mobile applications, which now enjoy a 4.6 user rating. Prior, Michael was VP UX and executive producer at Sumo Logic, VP UX and executive producer at TIBCO. He was also co-founder of General Interface, which he sold to TIBCO in 2004. That's when we met, so that was fun. He has a history of creating value for investors and organizations by bridging the gap between excellence in design, excellence in development. And Michael lives in Belmont, California with his wife, Julie, 4 kids, 2 dogs, and spends his limited time, kite surfing. I hope you're all excited as I am to get this going. Let me hand this off to Michael for a keynote, and let's get this party started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. First, shout out to BayOne. I've known these guys for quite a while. I would say to anybody here in the audience or on the recording, if you're looking for work, if you're looking to hire, you could do a lot worse than talking to the people at BayOne. They seem to know everybody. And greetings to the other people on the panel. It's 1 or 2 of you I'm meeting for the first time. Several of you we've crossed paths multiple times over the last little while. So I've got the honor of kicking this off. Just by way of introduction, as mentioned, kite surfer. I live out here in the Bay Area. My wife Julie and 4 kids. I've been out in the Bay Area since the mid '90s. One of the things that the BayOne people wanted me to do was to go through a little bit of my history and how I got here. You can see looking at this, I'm not actually a designer. I didn't go to Carnegie Mellon and get a good HCI degree. I haven't been to Art Center. I could not draw a logo to save my life. I started out with an undergraduate degree in psychology from University of Pennsylvania. Went on to study management of organizations and marketing at Columbia Business School. And after graduating from there, spent 5 years at Amex, where I learned about experimentation. I learned to not believe whatever hypotheses you might believe are true, and run lots and lots of experiments for direct mail and telemarketing. That taught me a lot of humility and a lot of excitement as your ideas fail or don't fail. I moved out to the Bay Area after living in New York for a while, because this internet thing looked like it might be interesting, and got involved in engineering. And this is where I developed my tech chops. at a startup with a friend of mine, this guy, Kevin Hackman. We developed some technologies for what are now single page applications. We sold that tech to Tibco in 2004. That was when engineers were still designing everything. So one of the things we did there was start a user experience team. If any of you have ever read Alan Cooper's excellent book, The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, the sale process to convince Tibco to do UX, about 20 of those on Amazon, and knowing nobody would read them, I sat down with a highlighter and highlighted some of the interesting passages and gave them out to the CEO and the CFO and some others and convinced them to hire a designer. That team was 85 or 90 design and dev after 4 or 5 years. Went to Sumo to learn cloud technology as opposed to on-prem software, build a design team there, also doing UI development. And then just about exactly 5 years ago, came over to RingCentral to build UX research, content strategy, design operations, patterns, and things like that here at RingCentral. As I said, that team is about 100 odd people now. Interestingly, we've hired 40 plus since March of last year. So we've, approaching half of our workforce has never met each other. We're very much hybrid. So speaking of hybrid, as Yogi Berra says, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. But one thing is clear, is we look at the future of work, and we spend a lot of time doing that because here at RingCentral, like at 8x8, I'm sure you'll hear as well, we build products that help people collaborate at a distance. There is no going back to March or December of 2019. That's over with the pandemic. We're going forward to this hybrid world. And a lot of times this gets talked about as this kind of automatic nirvana where if you want to work from home, you've just got this brilliant, self-fulfilling life of doing your best work and not having to commute. And those people are going back into the office. They've got all this extra space because of everybody who's not going in. So we're all going to have these beautiful, well-lit collaboration spaces, and things are going to be great. I think some of that's achievable, but what we look at, and as we talk with our customers, what we really see is maybe not so bright. What you've got in the hybrid space are a couple of guys at the whiteboard with their back to the camera, talking to themselves, and one poor person at home kind of waving their hands and trying to be heard. So I think as we talk about some of these things today, everybody, regardless of your role, should really be thinking, how are you going to optimize your situation? If you're going to be in the building, how do you make sure that you get the most out of your collaborators who are remote? And if you're remote, how do you become a valuable and highly contributing member of that team so you can continue to advance your career in that hybrid space? So hopefully we're going to have some really good discussion on all of that, and I'm excited to hear the questions. You're on mute.
I am so sorry. That's exactly what happens when you're in hybrid.
That has never happened in the last 18 months, ever, to anybody.
You're on mute is the most used. All right. Thank you, Michael. We were just getting warmed up, everybody. So let us head over to hear from our panel today. Let me introduce you to Brandon as well to help continue this fantastic conversation.
Hello, I'm Brandon Arnovic. I'm the manager of the UX team at Rodan & Fields here in San Francisco. Super stoked to see a large and diverse audience today, and happy to jump into some of these awesome topics. You're on mute again, Anuj.
You are? All right, perfect. Brandon, you're here. Swani, you're here. Abhijit, were introduced, and Joey. Brandon, you can take it forward.
Awesome. Like I said, thanks again for joining. Looks like we have a really great crowd of people, very diverse. I'm seeing people coming in from literally all over the world. And why don't we just jump right in? So the first question here is, what is UX design and why is it growing? I think I'll start here. When I hear people talk about UX, it's often in relation to digital products, mobile apps, kiosks, websites, commerce flows, etc. And I feel like there's great value in widening your lens when it comes to quote unquote, what is UX? People solving water shortage problems in third world countries, people that are designing MRI machines that are less scary to children, people tasked with selecting the proper lighting for the produce section at a supermarket. While these job titles may not be UX designer and are more likely to be architect or visual merchandiser, I feel like they are solving problems and they're creating value by design. And they're leveraging the disciplines and methodologies of UX from a broad lens. They have a strategic brainstorm. They go through a discovery phase. They diverge. They converge. There's testing. There's research, and they're ultimately landing on a validated solution. I think so. If we can collectively look at quote unquote what is UX with that wider lens, I feel like our channels of inspiration as designers will become that much more faceted. And I feel that inspiration, is crucial input, regardless of what we're trying to design. So I just take myself out of my head and out of my computer, and I start to just look at the world around me and see all the things that are part of an experience, and try to understand, what sort of inputs went into those. And I'm finding a lot of similarity and a lot of parity with my process designing digital products. So that's sort of my 2 cents on what is UX. I think less on what is the, how do we see it changing or growing? But I'll pose the question over to Abhijit and see if he can pipe in and wax us with his wisdom.
Thanks, Brandon. I think you so well put, right? So UX is really about the human, right? It's really about the end user and their needs, right? So to me, design and UX design kind of goes much beyond how we kind of label it currently with UI and UX and things like that. To me, it's really about understanding and solving the user needs, right? So there is definitely a user at the center of everything that we do. And then while we are understanding their needs, we focus on how we can make their interactions with product and services more meaningful, right? How can we make it easy, efficient for them so that it's productive, whether it's a personal or professional life. And last but not the least, how can we make it enjoyable and engaging for the users, right? So to me, UX is really kind of connecting those dots.
Yeah, definitely. Good points there. Michael, do you want to take a swath at this topic?
I think to double down on your comments, Brandon, UX and design are pretty broad disciplines. Design has a lot to do with the creating of products, and you need actual technical skills to do that. Figuring out what products you're creating, whether they're technology or something in the physical world, is the really interesting part of design and UX. And as you were saying, what makes a good UX or a good designer is first and foremost that connection to the customer, the user, the problems that they have that they're hoping to use your product, or in the jobs to be done format, hire your product to go solve those problems for them. And that can be interface design, research, content strategy, and there's a whole variety of disciplines that become part of that. But first and foremost is that connection to the human being who needs something and is counting on you to do a good job of designing it.
Yeah. I remember interviewing a potential candidate for the UX team a couple of years back, and they had just come off of a role where they were tasked with designing an emergency room in a hospital. And that's like, the furthest from a computer, at least, from the larger sort of approach. And they started literally with like, where do we put the clock? Where do we put the most important instruments? Where do we put the least important instruments? Where do we put the door? Emergency rooms are places where things are moving very quickly. There's a lot of triage happening, and you can go observe that, right? And you can start to get insights on, why are people tripping over each other, or why is that in the wrong place? And you can start tweaking and riffing on it to eventually, curating that more seamless and engaging experience, even within, a really physical space like an emergency room. Yeah, user-centered for sure. Anybody else? Joey, Dwani, do you want to chime in on this? What is UX design and why is it growing?
Sure. I could give my perspective. I think more on the growing part. I've been designing for about 20 years, and it's been across enterprise, consumer, all different types of products. And what I've seen throughout the years and how UX has changed is now it's getting to be more of an important partner with corporate environments, where before it was more of a service model or a discipline that was added after the fact. Usually after things were built, coming back to clean up a lot of experiences. So now, with UX being at the forefront and companies starting to get on board with that, how important user experience is, and it goes to what everybody here has been saying and mentioning. So I'll kind of piggyback on that is, a customer-centric mind, understanding what the customer needs are, what those priorities are, what the jobs to be done is, what the problems are that we're trying to solve for, whether it's a new feature or it could be a maintenance issue or usability issue that we're trying to tackle. There's just a whole spectrum of things to improve usability of products and better user experiences. So those are things that I've seen has changed. Budget as well has grown at companies that I've seen where budget has been kind of the last bit for user experience. So that's something that changed. Tools have changed. Tools have just advanced to help standardize a designer's workflow. I remember back in the days, we used to have, I would say, 5 to 6 different tools, and we had to juggle them between wireframing, flow mapping, visual design, UI design, rapid prototyping, and mobile prototyping across web as well. And now companies are starting to get smarter about, how do we standardize these tool sets so that we could improve not just the designer's world, to be able to standardize what that looks like across different, I would say, phases in the design process, but also to loop in cross-functional partners so that we can become one team instead of silo teams.
Yeah, good point, Joey. I think the industry is definitely growing, and there's a lot more. With that comes a lot more visibility into what we do, into our disciplines and our methodologies, and I think people are understanding it more. I feel like, 5 years ago, we had to really evangelize the value and really, in some instances, convince people, that what we're doing and our inputs will create, betterness for all. I think some companies, like Airbnb or Uber, that might have been started by designers, or designers were part of that first ilk, had less of a challenge of bringing UX in, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas, other companies, like my company, a skincare company, it wasn't part of the original sandwich. You know what I mean? And so, adding the UX later after the business has really established a lot of its road mapping, et cetera, was a little bit of a challenge. Now, awesome. People totally get it. And that's not just me at my company talking a lot. That's also just the community around us having more visibility and having UX just with a bigger seat at the table in general. Dwani?
Yeah, I was going to just chime in. I mean, you guys have mostly covered everything about it, right? So, but for me, like personally, I feel that design kind of humanizes the product that people want to use, they love to use. And nowadays, customers, they renew on like, how is your interface? How good is it? How is it easy to use? How efficient does it make our workday, right? So, I mean, it may sound cliched, but enterprises are finally embracing design in a way that they hadn't before. Right, we're seeing more and more CDOs in the leadership position. There are so many complex industries in today's hybrid workspaces, like security and identity, that are still struggling to be more human, because these are very, very technologically driven. They care more for the data and the enterprise, but what about the human factor out there, right? So they're dealing with the issues of shadow IT and how do they break away from that. And design has the power to kind of empower the end users in a way that technology alone just cannot do. And more executive leaderships are embracing the design to drive the business KPIs and drive product adoption, growth, and overall the total cost of ownership, right? And a higher NPS. That's what the businesses care for.
Yeah, good points. NPS, got to remember that one. So what is UX design? Why is it growing? That sort of takes me to the next question here. What skills and roles are evolving? So these may be skills and roles that are growing because UX is growing, or this may be skills and roles that are evolving because we've got a bigger seat at the table, and we're there now for vendor selection. We're there now for early strategic brainstorming, whereas we might have been brought in at the 11th hour. So what sort of skills and roles do you see evolving? I'll take the question to you first, Michael.
Sure. So, when we think about this here as we grow the team, there are kind of two halves. Like, what skills and roles does a healthy UX team needs as it grows? It's hard because we can't see the audience and we can't do any kind of raise hands. But I imagine out there's a whole lot of people who are a UX team of one that are doing the research, they're writing the CSS, they're arguing with the product manager about what the user needs, et cetera. And then there are people who are part of larger teams like our team here. In those larger enterprise teams, you start to get very specialized roles, not just content, but content strategy versus copywriting, not just research, but user empathy versus quant versus usability research. Here at Ring Central, we've got a very solid design operations team that keep everything just moving so that designers don't have to spend any part of their day at all in Jira. And then outside, there's a huge piece where, ultimately, if design does its job well, everybody becomes a designer. Not that everybody needs to know how to use Sketch and Figma, but everybody really ought to be wondering, who is my customer? What do they need? How can I give it to them? How can I run an experiment to find out if my ideas are right? Whether you're a PM or an engineer or somebody in marketing, they keep evolving on that path to design.
Yeah, all good points for sure. Abhijit, I take the question to you.
Sure, Brandon. I think it kind of ties back to your earlier question about growth, right? And just the fact that we have 3,000 plus people on this session involved and interested in UX is a telling sign, right? The field has kind of really grown and matured. There is huge demand coming from business, obviously because of just a fight for a market share, mind share with the customers, right? I mean, you have to have a superlative user experience to be successful in the market. Technology is a commodity, right? So with all that growth and responsibility that has come to the UX, right? We are seeing exponential opportunities for designers to kind of really grow and have a more influence when it comes to business strategy and decisions, right? In recent past, I have seen a lot of senior leadership roles kind of emerging, at C-level, but not just at the C-level, but also at the senior IC leadership roles within the companies, right? And these roles are often not involved in day-to-day design delivery, but it really focused on up-leveling design with business strategy, with the market strategy, customer experience, service design for the organization, right? And we have also seen a lot of the senior leadership roles are getting involved in innovation, right? Which is really kind of looking 12, 18, 24 months out in the market and really kind of defining the strategy and the direction for the companies. At an entry level as well, I'm seeing a very interesting trend, right? We are seeing designers kind of playing more rounded roles, right? So they are kind of expected to do more hands-on research, understand, get in front of the customers, understand how the customers are interacting with the products, and really kind of bring that knowledge into their design practices, right? So that's definitely one that I'm seeing. The other thing that I'm seeing is some kind of a early specialization, right, based on the domain, right? It could be an enterprise SaaS or retail or social media. It could be healthcare, financial services. So as a designer, we are kind of expected to kind of bring in some kind of a business domain industry knowledge into our work, and then kind of make it like a portable experience that you can carry from, say, if you're moving from a financial services industry to healthcare, you're still carrying some of that knowledge about customer experience and best practices from one industry to the other.
Yeah, good point. I really liked when you mentioned the fact that designers are now becoming more faceted in terms of what they're doing and their roles. I think historically, I've worked with a lot of designers that when they're working with research teams or doing some testing, they just throw the stimuli over the fence. They wait for the synthesized feedback. They weren't there for the user interviews. They weren't there for the discussion guide. And I think that's a big missed opportunity, especially if it's a track of work that they're designing. And I think that the fact that designers are now opening up their skill sets and embracing some of these other pieces that feed directly into the final product is a big win. Joey, thoughts on this? What skills and roles are evolving in UX?
I'd like to touch on a little bit that Abhijit was mentioning and Michael is I've seen where individual contributors are having more responsibilities, more at the strategic level, as well as the business leadership level to understand what are the business outcomes, less about kind of the UI and the visual design, but more about what are we trying to achieve for the customer? How do we bring in more revenue to the company? What sort of services or tools or apps can we start delivering if some companies are more legacy? I've seen this more in the hardware world where they're starting to kind of move towards this trend of offering software as a service in to complement the hardware that they offer as well, where traditionally they just, it was more on-prem, solutions for their customers. So that's kind of a trend that I'm seeing, as well as just disciplines being broken up. I think Michael touched on this too, is content strategist, which in my career has always been a gap, and it's always been difficult for us to bring alignment when it comes to the language, the voice and tone that we're trying to portray. And, we reach out to marketing brand as a first step, and then we find out that on the digital products, we need this specific discipline to help support us during reviews, but also to make sure that we're being consistent with our language, whether it's how we're presented in specific flows. It just goes deep into that. And, a lot of us just aren't experts at we may know the essence of what we're trying to portray in the designs or flows or experience, but having that specific discipline and, content strategy and language, which really is different than, I think, Michael, you touched on this too. It's different than some of the content writers that we see in companies because they're more on the technical documentation side.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't want to put that in front of our UI. We want to keep that more on the technical side or try to improve. So those are some of the roles that I see that are transitioning, as well as disciplines just kind of being split up across interaction design versus visual design versus core UX end to end. They kind of cover the full spectrum, as well as research. And right now I'm seeing a big trend with college grads where they're more on the end-to-end spectrum, where they could basically prototype, they could wireframe, they could do research, conduct their own research, which is a good thing to kind of tackle in this field. And adaptability. Yeah. I would say adaptability is important.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times, Joey, I've been working on a flow, and I said, "Well, where's the content coming from? Where's the copy coming from?" And my boss at the time might have said, "Oh, just put in whatever you think is best, and it'll get fixed before it gets produced or before it goes into production." Sure enough, didn't. And I think having somebody really own the tone and voice is a huge skill set that plugs really well into our worlds, and being part of that is key as well. Dwani, thoughts on skills and roles and how they're evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm going to chime in with all these three gentlemen have spoken about already, but yes, I think, as you scale design teams, design operation becomes very, very important. Keeping things on track, deliveries, and let the designers focus on what they do best at designing, right? The other bit, I think I'm a very strong advocate of is as you grow and you mature as a designer, there comes a time where you need to start thinking about business design. So that role kind of evolves into what is your business thinking? What are you solving for? What is the problem? And what is the outcome of that, right? As you solve for that, who's going to benefit out of that? So keeping all of those things in mind. So the business design role starts to evolve from that standpoint. And the other, I think, one of the things that is I find is a visual designer, a graphic designer, but nowadays there's a prototyper, which is a very, very powerful role today to kind of, it literally puts the storyline and brings it to life. So as you design, as you research your design, and then you bring things together, where are the micro interactions? Where is that nuance of wow factor, that delight factor, that prototyper can actually bring it to life? So I think these few roles are very, very imperative these days.
Yeah, our team is sort of small at Rodan and Fields. I wish we had a prototyper and a this and that, and everybody has their own superhero. We do have more of the, I think, Joey, what you were talking about, where it's kind of the full stack UX folk, where they're doing, prototyping, wireframing, early discovery and taking it through to high fidelity. But yeah, all good pieces here. So I see that there's a lot of people on the call making comments around, moving into UX or trying to get, a first gig and sort of, wanting advice, et cetera. This next question, I think, will play well into that. What skill gaps should UX bootcamp grads focus on? So this is immersion courses. This is, General Assembly. These they're not really colleges, but they're places that you can go take sort of a crash course and learn UX and learn sort of the approach to user-centered design, agile, et cetera. I feel like in my experience, I look at these portfolios of these people that are coming out of these boot camps, and it seems like there's a lot of similarities. They've created sort of a mini design system. They've redone the corner store's website, as a sort of a sampler, or rethought like the post office's website, where there's a lot more nuance and there might even be some commerce there. So you're seeing branding, you're seeing some flows, but what I'm not seeing is the designer trying to break it. I think I look at this and I sort of, for lack of a better term, I'll double click on it and it just doesn't take you anywhere. It's one layer. It's sitting right on the top. I think these designers need to be willing to toss away their designs that aren't working and not feel emotionally connected to them. I think, I've been designing since the 80s, logos and threefold brochures. And anytime someone wouldn't like something, I got so upset. And I was like, oh, I just spent all that time and I picked the colors and it was so cool. And I think the first thing, we just really need to be able to throw away our designs and try again. And I think the visual chops, albeit awesome, don't necessarily translate into a great UX designer. I think, again, I see these shiny sort of, I remade the website for so-and-so and I'm just not seeing, edge cases, error states, all the weird little corners that you need to tease out to really get that full flow happening where you don't end up, lost. Joey, thoughts on UX bootcamp grads and things to focus on?
Yeah, that's a big topic. And, I agree with a lot of the points that you're mentioning too, is I think, now in this field, in today's technology, I get this strong feeling that a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes. I don't know if it's a culture thing within companies or, whatever it is, I try to encourage my team that, hey, you know what, if we make a mistake, we learn. We learn from that mistake. We scrap it, we throw it away, we start over, get up and come up with some new concepts, and then we test them and iterate. I don't know. I think it's just history. I think everybody wants to be, good at what they do and they don't want to make mistakes, but it's okay to make mistakes. It's how we learn and it's how we get better and it's how we improve on our products, and it all applies to everything in life. Some of the things that I think are skill gaps that I've seen too are similar to Brandon's comment as well. As you'll see a lot of similarities in portfolios. I get them as well. There's days out of the week that I'm going through probably 20, 30, 40 portfolios, and you could tell what's been templatized and you could tell what hasn't been. You could tell which one has went through the nitty-gritty details, that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the nasty details in the process that they went through, even if it wasn't the right approach. This was the concepts that they went through.
Sure.
Yeah, and then some skill gaps with boot camps, I think that would be good, is just figuring out how do you teach more than just skills. How do you get good at bringing alignment with stakeholders? How do you know to identify those opportunities when something just isn't operating right from a collaboration perspective or operational perspective across design, development, engineering, PM, and product? How do you find those opportunities to, maybe write the requirements and, get a good understanding and common ground on, what we're trying to achieve? And from a design perspective, they have to eventually translate those, into tangible experiences. And
Sure.
There's so much ambiguity. I do see there's a current gap with a lot of newcomers, current grads, junior members of the team. They just, don't know where to take it or don't know which questions to ask. And, having that as part of the discipline, I think really goes a long way. Sometimes it's hard to identify, but it's good conversations as part of that training is to, how do you identify opportunities when there's misalignment or there's siloed teams? Because
Sure.
at the end of the day, we got to work together to achieve this, this goal and march towards the same goal. Where that's a tough situation to be in.
Yeah, definitely ask questions, try to break it. Don't be afraid to take another stab or to come at it with a different lens. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the next question. We can certainly come back to this in the Q&A. So what should UX designers, let's see, whoa, that's not the right question. What advice do we have for individual contributors, ICs, looking to transition into management? So this is big. This happened to me just recently, and I could say I didn't want to stop designing. I wanted to be in the weeds. I wanted to take tracks of work. And ultimately what ended up happening was these tracks that I reserved for myself got very compromised. I said, oh, I'll take the checkout flow. You guys do the other stuff. You do the PDP or whatever, or you do the mobile breakpoint or something. And I would do my flow in the 11th hour. Whereas before, when I was an individual contributor, I had all the time to go through my phases, my discovery, my diverging, my converging, et cetera. But I think when you're becoming a manager and you're really leaning on really good manager skill sets and you're communicating with the team and you're aware of everything going on in all the different flows, you don't have time to jump in and take a track. And if you're as busy as we are here at Rodan and Fields, maybe in other instances where there's a lot more downtime or a lot more bandwidth or the team is larger, maybe. But in my experience, become a manager, own it. Your skill is now recognizing good designers. It's not designing. And that's a total skill in itself. And being able to recognize good designers and have them become leads and have them present their own work in meetings, and you stand behind that and support them, that's totally as awesome as making a killer Figma flow for checkout, right? And that's something that took me a minute to kind of wrap my mind around. Dwani, thoughts on this, individual contributor to management?
I know, Brandon, you make it sound so easy, like letting go of something that you've done all your life. It's not that easy. And I've been there. I've had people who've done that. So I think number one is, if you've been designing all your life and you want to grow into management, you have to let go of micromanagement. And you may not be doing it consciously, but yes, trust, hand over small bit pieces, hand off certain things, build that trust the person that you've groomed, that they are ready to pick it up, and then start building your managerial, ramp up on your managerial skills, right? Build your leadership style, learn from what you've had as good managers, bad managers in your past, understand your mentors, different leadership styles, what you like, embody certain things, try certain things. And, I think number one thing as you grow is like, you need to empower your team. You need to evangelize and make them successful. And you can do that when you are a cross-functional leader, right? So as you build your leadership style, understand the power and mediation of cross-functional collaboration, learn the business language where you can have a meaningful conversation with cross-functional leaders, and they may not be speaking your design language, but there is a common business design language that as a leader you need to speak. You need to figure out the ROIs, you need to figure out what they care about and translate that design language into those KPIs. That will help you speak to upper management. That will help you deliver the impact of design, establish the importance of your org. And I think that approach eventually gets you that coveted voice or the seat at the table.
Yeah, really good points. Abhijit, talk to me about going from an IC, individual contributor, into management.
Sure, and I can definitely talk about this topic since I've kind of made this transition a couple of times in my career so far, right? I've moved from an IC role to a management leadership role and then kind of back to an IC leadership role now. And it's a very interesting switch, right? And I don't think it's a one-time switch. You can always move from an IC to a management and management to an IC role, right? I think as a designer, we need to be very open because the growth can happen in both directions. So that's important for everyone to understand that becoming a people manager should not always be seen as the only way to grow in this career. You can also grow as an IC leader. But essentially, the shift is happening from you're solving product problems, now you're solving people problems, right? And to me, a role of a manager is really more of a mentor coach. I think, Dhwani, you kind of talked about that, right? How are you kind of really providing that kind of a cover to your team so that they are growing? You're not designing products, but you're essentially designing a system that enables designers to do good design, right? So you're kind of putting a system, an architecture, culture, routines in place, which will allow designers to do good design, and not just designers, but also the cross-functional teams to do good design, right? There are a set of new skills that you need to learn. and that's important if you're thinking of making the switch, right? So, for example, talking about business, understanding the business language, negotiations, influencing, right? Those are some of the very important skills. Networking, right? You need to kind of be able to network with with wide set of stakeholders within the organization, right? So those are some of the things that I would definitely highlight if someone is thinking about making a switch.
Yeah, good points. You're definitely engaging in a multitude of channels, whereas designers use a little more heads down. Yeah. Michael, any thoughts on this, going from a IC to management?
Sure. I want to double down on something that Dhwani said about finding mentors and being out there. I think the number one thing that you can do, find somebody in your organization or outside of your organization. I would suggest, I don't know, maybe everybody else isn't going to like this, but everybody in the audience, you're looking at 5 names right here. These are people who've been there and done this before. Find a good mentor, because you're going to have 100 more questions after this one. And then, as Joey was saying, leading is not the same as designing. It's been a long time since I've had any actual job skills of my own. I could not successfully interview for even an internship on the team that I lead now. But nobody needs me to be a better designer or a better researcher or a better writer than they are. They need me to build the team and the culture where they can thrive. So find a mentor, and then when you make the transition, just jump in with both feet and lead away.
Yeah, that's a great point. All those are great points, Michael. I feel like and Dhwani, just being able to cut the cord, I think, I fear all the time that, what if the world changes in some big way where I need to go get a job somewhere else and I have to go kind of like get my feet back into the fonts and color palettes and Figma and this and that. And there's all these new tools and new plugins I have to go learn. And I think that you just, certainly attach to design and certainly have that as a big inspiration, but go in all the way, like you said, dive all the way in, become that new role and own it, and you'll be respected for that skill set just as much as you were your killer designer back whenever, right?
And I think one last point that I want to make for a lot of people in the audience, that the career path is not necessarily designer to design leader to design VP. There's a lot of really good, excellent craft jobs that are out there, and organizations are getting better and better at respecting people with strong craftsmanship. So, if you're thinking to yourself, I don't really want to be a manager, like, that's great. Go double down on the things that you want to do. You can always change your mind later, or just get really good at what you're doing.
Yeah. Yep. Good point. All right, let's move on to a really fun one. What tools are you using right now? I think people are talking about tools all the time. They're constantly evolving. They're constantly, sort of sunsetting other tools, if you will. Joey, talk to me about the tools you use, sort of your UX stack, if you will.
Sure. Sunsetting has always been a process on most of the teams that I've led and been a part of. Right now at MSCI, we're currently using Figma. We've standardized on Figma. We used to use a number of tools, including InVision, Sketch, but to close the gaps between design and dev and build that collaboration model that we were looking for, Figma was the way to go. We got onboarded with the engineering team, but also the PMs, which we're starting to build that relationship. Miro is another tool that we use more for digital whiteboarding collaboration. We're getting into FigJam as well, so we're just trying to evaluate what's that best collaboration tool that we're going with. When it comes to outside of design, that it's a little interesting because we have multiple teams right now that are kind of working in Jira. Some are working in DevOps, Azure. So we're just in this nitty-gritty phase of trying to standardize our project management more on the development side, and how we can be more injected and partner up with product as well as the engineering team on the things that we need to achieve for this year in Q3 and Q4. And that's pretty much our tool set. So I'll just kind of recap: Figma, Miro, FigJam, Jira, Azure DevOps, Confluence to track requirements and documentation. We are experimenting with Overflow. That's the last one. Overflow is more at a high level. It's kind of a tool that I use more at, to showcase more mental models at the executive level for some of the things we're trying to tackle. Less about design, but more about the mental model for some of the business requirements.
Yeah, good set. I think we're using a lot of the same stuff over here at Rodan and Fields. We are sort of a little late to the game on Figma, but we are wholly onboarded now, and it is saving so many resources and so much time. Just in the collaboration, the ability to look at the design attributes from the dev perspective, the ability for stakeholders to come in as being invited in sort of read-only mode to audit some of the different flows, and it's all happening within one product. Whereas before we were exporting PDFs, we were taking people to InVision. It was all over the place. So we've really Figma's really solved a lot of that for us. Yes. Michael, talk to me about tools.
Well, we're using pretty much the same stack as everybody else out there. I would say the main thing when you think about tools is whatever you're learning now, whatever you're using now, that's not what you're going to be using in 3, 4, 5 years from now. So get used to the pace of change.
Yeah, PageMaker no longer here. So true. Again, in the interest of time, let's move on to this last question. And again, we can talk about tools in the Q&A and in the chat. So the last question here is, how do you see UX design changing in the future? I think we're all aware of virtual reality, augmented reality, machine learning, VUIs like Alexa and Siri and chatbots. I think those channels will definitely be part of UX and design in the future. But where else? And in those places, where sort of deeper in do you see the attachment and the connection between UX and the future of design in general and where people are trying to go? I'll take that to you, Abhijit, first.
Sure, Brandon. So I think, if you notice, right, the fundamental principles and foundation of user-centered design hasn't changed much over a period of time, right? It's always about starting with the users, understanding their world, and then working backwards from that point. At the same time, as we just talked, right, UX field has been always open to change, right? And we are probably the most adaptive, most flexible field, right? We have always been very open to kind of, include people from different disciplines, right? We have Michael, who came from psychology, right? I'm sure there are people who come from software engineering and arts and science and industrial design. So the field has enriched because of being inclusive and open, right? We have also seen how we have included the best practices coming from, say, marketing or coming from social media, right? There are program management, product management, engineering best practices. So I think that will continue. The field itself is so resilient that it will continue to kind of adapt and grow to the demands of the industry. I think the fundamental shift that we are going to see, one is, of course, there is going to be much tighter integration to all the emerging tech that we are seeing, right? And you already kind of talked about AI, machine learning, data being the new oil or new air, right? So data definitely is going to be an equal partner to design going forward, because there is so much of data that is being generated, right? And everything is measurable now. So that's definitely one big shift. I would also say that UX by definition, right? A lot of UX, I would say, majority of UX is two-dimensional at this point of time, right? That's going to change fundamentally, right? We are going to kind of look at UX delivered through voice, AR, VR experiences. We are already seeing how automotive industry is kind of changing the experiences inside the cars, right? I think that's so demand on designing experiences which are portable, which are modular, is going to be very, very key, right? And that's where we are seeing the microservices or API-based interfaces, right? So designers will need to kind of adopt to that kind of a thinking that, I'm designing this experience, but it can manifest in different form factors. How can I support that, right? How can I design an experience which is modular and portable? Yeah,
good points. Really good. Dhwani, are we going to be living in a Road Warrior or Tron movie in the future?
Well, the versatility and impact of UX design today makes it core for any new technology to embrace it from the get-go. I mean, we question, will the power of AI, ML be consumed without any use cases, without the right design? Probably not. What about conversational AI? What about big data? What about carbon emissions? Like, design has the power to impact all of these things, right? And humanize them, humanize the old technologies, the new technologies, and make us more informed and adaptable and responsible as human beings. So yes, I see us designing for bigger and smaller screens, for things that we can see and touch, from cars to spaceships, but also feel and hear, right? So I also see us, impacting the future of human race and designing for environment, for inclusivity of all. And I see roles being embraced early on in from school, education, which makes me pretty happy. And, we have come a long way.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think just to arc back to some of the earlier conversation around, designers are designing emergency rooms or helping third world countries with water shortage problems and things like that. I think people are recognizing that UX is really solving problems and creating value by design, and that can happen outside of the digital medium. I think I've heard recently that healthcare industry is hiring UX people because they're really good at sort of untangling messes and sort of strategizing and really getting a good roadmap towards solving problems and things like that. So I think the future of UX will be bringing people out of the digital medium and into more traditional forms of things. Joey, thoughts? Talk to me about the future of UX design.
There's a lot of topics you guys touched on. In my head, I was thinking, the healthcare too, just because I have a few colleagues that have moved from, more of the digital products to the healthcare industry. And, that's a huge opportunity. There's so much opportunity outside of digital products, mobile websites, cross-platform, products that we're trying to achieve goals on that, there's a whole untapped space in the world. And you guys mentioned, just a few of them, healthcare, global, other industries that may not necessarily have a hardware product or a mobile product or a web product, but they're trying to tackle something for their customer that may be a service or any other value to them. So that's kind of how I see, this field really changing in the future. Is it's just becoming a broader area for us to cover within technology.
Yeah, good stuff. We've got a question from one of the attendees. This is from Yash Shah. Do you guys mind talking a bit more about specialization paths other than management? I'll pose that question over to you, Michael.
Sure. So it's a great question. I think that as in the audience, we've got people who are just getting out of programs or different educational tasks that are getting them their first jobs. And we've got people who've been around for quite a while. And I think as you advance in your career, the more specialized you become, the stronger you become at what you do. If somebody is looking for the thing that you do really, really well, that's where the recognition, that's where the influence, that's where the compensation is. So in the organization that we've got here, we've got people who do general design. They catch a task, they've got to put together a flow, they've got to look at the research and propose the best way to do stuff. But we've also got very strong ICs that are doing very specialized things. So I've got a senior director who is only worried about the design system. No direct reports, no management, just what are the patterns that the other designers are using. We are going to put more time and effort into our button than a lot of apps put into their entire app. And it's going to be a great button, and he's in charge of that. In the research side, we've got people who, we've got user testing and people who go out and understand that. We've got people whose only job it is to dig around in Qualtrics and Mixpanel and other tools to try to uncover where blockages are that they can report to the designers. These people couldn't design a customer journey map to save their lives, but boy, do they know what happens when somebody hits a particular screen. And then within design, there's specializations for the kinds of problems you try to solve. Dhwani, I think you'd be great to address that. You're working on a product that's got really interesting end user tasks that are very consumery and super complex IT administration tasks, which are overwhelming. Like, how do your designers specialize on that?
I know. Thank you. And we come from the same industry, so you know the pain of it. But yeah, totally. I would say, number one, I feel is that, data science is picking up. Tapping into a really nice data scientist who can get us information about how people are using our products, why people are renewing versus not renewing. And sometimes the issues are not just within the product. It could be any cycle of consumer behavior, like selling behavior. It could be any time of like renewals from like a service standpoint. So being able to dig into data, get that information over to the designers and the researchers to provide, for them to kind of provide better designs or service design as well, is a really, really meaningful way of like addressing this. Right back at you on the design systems. It's a big beast, and we need a specialized person focusing in on it and driving it from like from a pretty seniority standpoint. You're absolutely right on that one too.
Yep, I echo that sentiment. Question from Rachel as an attendee here. How big a role do you think UX will play in driving sustainability? I'm assuming that means it's in relation to maybe sustainability within the economy or the environment, or maybe all the above. I take it as sustainability within the environment, and I think UX will play a big role. I think the methodologies and the disciplines in UX can be leveraged when looking at sustainability in the environment. You can test things, you can research, you can get great feedback, you can get a lot of user input, and certainly the environment gives you feedback. So I think that UX could play a big role there if the sustainability you're speaking of is environmental sustainability. Any thoughts about sustainability in UX from any of the other folks on the panel?
Sure, I can kind of chime in here, Brandon, right? Some of the work that I did for a large bank in recent past was really focused on, designing for sustainability, right? Designing product and service experiences for sustainability. And I think in general, customer experience, user experience can play a big role, largely because sustainability is a big deal with quite a few of our customers and users, right? I mean, I work in an enterprise space. We basically designs data center software, having an environmental impact of data center, the power usage, all of that is very, very critical for our customers, right? So designing experiences which are going to reduce the carbon footprint for our customers is going to be critical, right? At the same time, designing product and services that are going to kind of give back and be sensitive to those cause, right? So when you're designing products, well, in the physical product space, right, you have to kind of also think about end of life experience for the product, right? How are you going to discard the product? How are you going to dispose the product? How are you going to recycle the product? So all those things are becoming very, very important, right? When you think about end-to-end experiences for products.
Yeah, good point.
Look out for opportunities within your own organizations and with your clients, and understand where you can make a difference.
Yeah. In the beauty and skincare space, we're seeing a lot of products now selling refills. So you don't need to throw it out. You can buy the refill, or we're seeing a lot of sustainability in terms of recyclable. And I think when you look at skincare and you look at beauty products, historically there have been ingredients that might not have been so eco-friendly and have maybe posed a block in terms of being able to recycle them because they were in this packaging, right? So I think hand in hand, both the ingredients as well as the packaging, and I think the consumer is looking a lot more at these. They've become hot topic, opportunities for the user to understand better, what they're putting on their skin or putting into their body, and I think all of that is getting a lot more visibility into it. For sure,
a great example, right? It's not just the customer looking for refill; it's also a great business model because you're moving from one-time purchase to a subscription.
That's right, definitely, which is also very trending and has been for some time now. So we have time for a couple more questions here. So we informally transition into the Q&A part of this talk. Here is a question from Rizaba on one of the attendees. What are some ways UX practitioners working in a contract capacity make themselves indispensable to their client company for permanent hire? Wow. Well, I can definitely speak to that. I've got many contractors. Some came from BayOne here, the folks hosting this call, and it becomes very clear to me when there's a contractor that I definitely have my eyes on to potentially roll on as a full-time employee, really based on their being a self-starter, them being a great contributor, very open to give input, but also to take input. being part of the design crits, and just really keeping up with the rest of the team. I think that when people are delivering, half-baked work or really quiet in sort of collaborative sessions, that's sort of a red flag. That might not be a contributor that want to roll on full time. I'm sure there are lots of other signs. Again, my team is fairly small. Joey, Michael, Abhijit, Thwani, thoughts around how that contractor can be recognized for permanent hire?
I mean, my number one thought would be like, design, you get sparks of design at certain times. So if you are one of 9 to 5 clock in, clock out, I probably will not last. How involved you are with the design process, how well do you negotiate for your designs with product management? How well do you fit with the culture? How does the team see you as a family that they want to continue working with, right? How indispensable have you become for a product manager who wants to make sure you stay on? I think these are the things I would say that would take you from contracting to a full-time permanent hire.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from the panel here?
I'll say a bit of a contrarian position, which is, all kidding aside, don't take contract gigs. It's really easy to settle into a pattern, and without taking anything away from BayOne, because they've been terrific for me for years. But you can get lazy as a contractor, allowing somebody to find you 6, 12, 18-month gigs and not putting the hard work into looking for a full-time gig on your own. So I would say if you're contracting, maybe the place you're at isn't the place that's going to hire you full-time. But if you're doing good work, there are a lot of places out there. I would say don't go looking for jobs, go look for advice, set up as many informationals as you can with your friends, anybody you can, go in, learn about the organization. There's an old proverb, if you ask for a job, you'll get advice. If you ask for advice, sometimes you'll get a job.
All right, well, there we are. You are waxing us with some wisdom, Michael. It looks like we have time for one more question, and this is from Harvey Kraft. This question is, how will XR AI-capable web impact UX when consumers exist inside the designed environment? All right, so I'm going to let one of the folks on the panel here who knows this channel probably better than maybe I do jump in. I understand AI and I understand XR. I guess, when they're inside the design environment, is this when you're wearing sort of the virtual, goggles and you're in there? Is that what this is pertaining to? Any of you guys, is that resonating with you, this question?
No, not too much. I mean, I do get AI capable web, but inside the design environment.
Are we thinking Oculus?
Yeah.
That's what came to my mind.
Yeah. I think it can lead to a healthy lifestyle.
An unhealthy lifestyle or a healthy lifestyle?
A healthy lifestyle, I said.
Yeah, I think maybe just AI in general, are artificial intelligence. I think of machine learning, along with that. I think, in relation to my space, the skincare space, I think if we can go get, we can tell somebody what skin condition they may have by looking at their face through a photograph based on a million photos that have already been analyzed. That certainly is some bit of AI and machine learning, and that definitely could, has and will continue to permeate my industry. Where do you guys see AI playing a role in your worlds, Michael?
So as we look at AI and machine learning more broadly in the world of collaboration, it's got a lot to do with sifting out the signal from the noise. Take the last hour and 9 minutes. Somewhere in here, there's 15 minutes of good, solid content. When you can train an AI to go through the transcript, when you can train an AI to look at the nonverbal communication and distill out the content of the meeting, you've just saved somebody a lot of time. And think about every meeting that you're in at work. It takes an hour to get the big hand pointed at the 12 again. How many minutes of that are really valuable to you? And can you get an AI to distill it for you?
Yes.
Yeah, just to extend to what Michael said, right? In the world that I live in, right, we are dealing with systems which are probably kind of handling thousands, probably millions of events every hour. And it's humanly impossible to kind of really monitor and operate systems like that, right? And especially with with security becoming such a big focus, right? How do we help our clients really manage and secure their environments, right? Their infrastructure, their applications, and their data, right? So AI becomes hugely important for us to really kind of focus on how can we automate and how can we make things easy without minimal load on the end users.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, if you look at the collaboration industry like we're talking about, right? How do we make an agent's job easier? How do we prompt the right data or the analytics to the administrator, right? So they wake up in the middle of night, do they have the right notification of what is breaking for them, right? So the power of AI would show up from like going through the multitude of data and bringing out the right information to the tips of the user.
Yeah, good points. Good points. All right, panel and attendees. It looks like we're going to be wrapping up here shortly. Thank you all for your great questions and for your comments, and thank you panelists for your great insight and for waxing some wisdom with us here today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody. Thanks for having us.
Anuj, you're on mute once last time. There we go.
Thank you so much, guys. That was an awesome session and a lot to chew on, to be honest. As one of the attendees, Chris Avenir says, great perspectives and knowledge bombs dropped today. So I wanted to thank all of our panel, Tony, Michael, Abhijit, Brandon, and Joey, for taking out the time to join us today and share some insightful information. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone today. I can hear you guys talk all day, to be honest. Just a quick heads up for everybody that's attending. We also have another great event coming up on August the 19th for our Throughline Thursdays event. Get comfortable with uncomfortable, where Dhwani Soni, one of our panelists, will be interviewed by our very own Neha Malhotra, and they will be talking about Dhwani's journey to design leadership, navigating challenges and advice that she has for all of us. Do join in. For all our listeners, if we don't get to your questions live, ask us on Twitter at BayOne Solutions and tag Future of Work. If you missed part or want to re-listen, these will be on YouTube shortly. If you would like to learn more about our webinars or listen to some of our old ones, make sure to visit our LinkedIn and YouTube pages. It has some fantastic content. If you'd like to know more about BayOne, please visit our website, bayone.com. Thank you again, and hope to see you on our next live stream. Enjoy the rest of your day and talk to you soon. Bye.